Hey everyone, and welcome back to WDIM News, my weekly podcast where I talk about sci-fi stuff and some other stuff. My name is Eric. Thank you very much for joining me today, where I have quite a few things to discuss, including an update on the still ongoing actor strike, which is not going the way that most people expected. Then I want to talk about the full trailer for the new series Monarch: Legacy of Monsters, a series that will be released next month on Apple TV. I'm a huge fan of huge monsters, and this series looks like it may be better than some of the films in the Godzilla and Kong series. Since the end of the writer's strike, I have brought up a few projects that have been announced, and last week, Michael Mann confirmed that he will be making a sequel to a film that he helped create in the 1990s that I absolutely love and that I want to talk about with you. Also, Netflix announced a new way for fans to get involved with their favorite series on their service that I think could be pretty revolutionary, especially given the past year's writers and actor strikes slowing down productions on every project. Then, I have a few things to discuss concerning Star Trek, including comments made by Alex Kurtzman at the New York Comic Con about the future of the franchise. Also, how one series was saved from cancellation by Netflix, along with my review of the latest episode of Star Trek Lower Decks. But before I get into all of that, I just want to thank you for clicking on this podcast and ask that you please hit that like button to help support my channel. And be sure to subscribe for future videos. So let's just get the bad news out of the way. I've been trying to update you almost every week on what's going on with the various strikes in Hollywood. Of course, the WGA strike, the writer's strike, just ended just weeks ago. It was finally ratified. And most people expected that the actor strike would follow in suit, but it doesn't look like that is going to happen. So even though the WGA strike ended officially just weeks ago, and it was believed that a deal with the SAG Actors Union would follow shortly thereafter, since both groups were thought to be negotiating for similar terms. However, it seems that this is not entirely the case, and the Producers Union has made it seem like a deal is not possible given the current terms. This comes after representatives from the SAG Union and the Alliance of Producers had been in meetings for the past few weeks. This past week, the SAG Union released a statement that in part read that after trying to schedule further negotiations, the Producers Union responded they had no intention of returning at this time. So this is not great news because it means that the SAG Union and the Producers Union were in negotiations and something happened and the SAG Union wanted to make, more negotiations on the schedule and the Producer Union just walked away and they said, right now, we don't even want to talk to you. We are not interested in what you have to say. So that's not great. And it appears that there are two sticking points that the producers do not want to budge on that were not part of the WGA deal, the writers deal. So the first one is that the SAG Union is asking for a 2% revenue share on streaming rights, which just means that 2% of the revenue that each streaming service makes off whatever project movie that they're showing, they would put that in a fund back to the SAG Union, and the SAG Union would disperse those funds to people either within the union or people that work on that specific project. And the producers just say that that will cost them too much money, which 2%, it doesn't seem like that's that much money. And in the article I read, they showed, all the CEOs of the big production companies and what they make and just what 2% of their salaries, what that would be. And that would more than cover what the SAG Union is asking for. So that seems kind of shady that they don't want to do that. I think that it may all come back to being transparent about streaming and how many views you get and what constitutes a view. I think that even though there was language put into the WGA deal concerning streaming and being transparent about that data, I think that the producers don't want to base any kind of revenue off that data because I think that they don't truly understand it yet because streaming is still a very new kind of medium and they don't know, or at least they're not 100% sure how much money that's going to be, and that just scares them. They don't want to lose what they don't know they're going to lose. So I think that that's why they don't want to give this 2%. And it really seems silly. 2% is really, unless you're talking about milk, 2% really isn't important when you talk about what you need. So this doesn't make a lot of sense to me, but maybe, I don't have the right perspective on this. But from what I'm reading, this does not sound like something that the producers should have a problem with. The second thing that is kind of holding up the deal between the actors and the producers is that the producers want to be able to digitally scan actors and use their likeness in perpetuity without further compensation. So this is how somebody described this process that's actually worked on a project where this came to be. This came from SAG-AFTRA's Duncan Crabtree, Ireland, and he says that studios still maintain that, for example, for some new actor being hired on an MCU movie, that on day one, they can say, you have to sign over the rights to your digital replica for the entire franchise. You would be expected to say today, that I'm signing over my digital replica for movies not even imagined yet that are going to happen in 15 to 20 years from now. You wouldn't have any right to say that happens, and you wouldn't have any right to get paid for it. I mean, that seems crazy to me. That's like basically showing up for one day of work, them paying you for one day of work, and then just getting that work from you over and over again and not paying you for it. And I don't know if you guys saw this, but circulating on Twitter this past week, or X, whatever it's formerly known as Twitter, whatever you're supposed to say now, there is a video. It's from some Disney series. I'm not sure which one. But the series actually did this. They put digitally scanned AI actors in the background, and you can see them clapping in a high school gymnasium for some basketball game or something, and they look scary. Like, they do not look real. And if anything, what should come from that is that the technology is definitely not there yet to do this. So I don't know, again, why the producers are making such a big deal about this, because what it looks like now is just horrible. Like, nobody would really buy that these people are really people. They might as well just use the, paper cutouts that they used to use way back in the day, because this looked horrible. If I can find a link to the thing, I'll put it in the description below, because it just looks really bad. So these are the two things that's holding up this deal: being able to digitally scan actors and sharing a 2% revenue. Again, this doesn't look like the actors are asking for that much. It looks like the producers are being kind of unreasonable here. So this means that there's currently no end in sight for this strike. And the rumor is that the producers would now rather wait out the actors, similar to what their reported strategy was during the WGA negotiations. And that did not work out well for the producers, because it seems like the writers got everything they wanted. So I don't know if they're just waiting 2 months because the actor strike started, 2 months later after the writers did, and they think that the actors are going to get more jumpy or whatever. But I believe that this may, in fact, impact the holiday box office, which all along I thought that the producers were trying to prevent, because they've already lost a lot of money. I mean, that movie, The Creator, that just came out that I've been raving about, I saw something that says that so far in 3 weekends, that movie has made $79 million, and it was made for $80 million. And that movie definitely would have been more popular if the actors that were in it could have promoted it. And when they're on strike, they can't promote anything. So it looks like we may see a lot more things get pushed back. I'm going to talk about a couple of new projects here that have release dates currently. But if this strike doesn't get settled soon, they're just going to push these release dates back again, which really is too bad. So let me know, what do you think about this news? I know it's not great news. That's why I wanted to get the bad news out of the way. I think everything else I have to say is good news. So let's just get this out of the way. But yeah, what do you think about this news? And are you scared that we're not going to be getting a lot of new content in 2024 like I am? Because this is really getting down to the wire here. If they don't get a deal in the next couple of weeks, I think that they may just sit out the rest of the year, because like I said, the onus will be on getting actors to promote movies that are released during the holiday season. And if this goes too far and they can't get the actors to promote these movies, they're just going to say F it and either move the movies to a new date, or they're going to release them and take the hit. So if they know they're going to do that, then they're not going to sign a deal in November in the middle of the holiday season. They're going to say, screw you actors. We're going to wait even more months until the holiday season is over, because we've already, effed the bed on that one. So there's no way that we can get our money back for that. If they don't make a deal in the next week or two, I'm telling you, it's going to go into 2024, and that's not good. That means that by the end of 2024, a lot of us will be watching reruns. I bet I'll be watching Breaking Bad again, and Better Call Saul, and Star Trek Enterprise, all the classics, all the usual suspects. But yeah, let me know, what do you think about this news? And do you want actors and the producers to get back to the table so we can see more projects on the screen? Let me know in the comments below. So next, I want to talk about the full trailer that was just released for the Apple TV series Monarch: Legacy of Monsters. This was a full 2+ minute trailer that was released on YouTube. The trailer currently has over 300,000 views in just 2 days, which is decent. I mean, it is a series, not a movie, so it's good. I think the original teaser has over 1 million. And that was only about 1 minute long, but there was a lot of new footage in this trailer. We saw a couple of new characters, one of which I'm going to discuss because it's kind of funny, but the first 2 episodes of the 10-episode season will be released on November 17th of this year. I don't think that they're going to move this one. How I just said, projects could get their dates moved. This is one that I think will be released on November 17th. I believe that it's been kind of in the pipeline for a while, and also there is another movie that's going to be released next year, and I'm pretty sure that this series has to be released before the movie gets released. So that may be another reason why this series will be released on this date. And if it's a streaming series, people can go back and watch it. It's not that big of a deal if it's released and not a bunch of people watch it, because through word of mouth, which has happened with a lot of streaming series, fans will go back and watch the series and it'll become just as popular. But Monarch Legacy of Monsters will be the 6th installment in the MonsterVerse franchise. That started out with the 2014 Godzilla movie that was directed by Gareth Edwards. Then we had the movie Kong Skull Island. Then there was another Godzilla film. Then there was Godzilla vs. Kong. And there was also an animated Skull Island series that was on Netflix that I didn't even know about until I researched this new series. The Godzilla vs. Kong sequel is the movie that will be after this series. That's been given the title The New Empire, and that will be released tentatively on April 12th, 2024. Now, that is something that I think could have its date pushed back if the actor strike continues into 2024. An official synopsis was also released for the series, and it is as follows. Following the epic battle between Godzilla and the Mutos that leveled San Francisco and the shocking revelation that monsters are real, two siblings, following in their father's footsteps, uncover their family's connection to the secretive organization known as Monarch. Clues lead them to the world of monsters and ultimately down the rabbit hole to Army officer Lee Shaw, taking place in the 1950s and half a century later, where Monarch is threatened by what Shaw knows. The dramatic saga, spanning 3 generations, reveals buried secrets and the ways that epic, earth-shattering events can reverberate through our lives. Kurt Russell and his son Wyatt Russell will be playing the same character during these 2 different time periods. During these 2 different time periods that the synopsis talked about, the 50s and half a century later. John Goodman's character also returns from Kong Skull Island. Spoiler alert if you haven't seen that film. His character actually dies in that movie, and I think his character either appears through flashbacks or through found footage. He made some film and they find it all these years later. I also noticed in this trailer that Anders Holm from Workaholics plays a younger version of John Goodman's character in this series. I just think that's hilarious. I don't know if there are any Workaholics fans out there. I know that Adam Devine has done a lot of stuff that I like, but it was so funny to see, wait, is that Anders from Workaholics? What is he doing in a Godzilla thing? But yeah, more power to him. It'll be funny to see Anders Holm as a young John Goodman, probably taking place in the 50s. The trailer makes this series feel like a sequel to the first 2 films in the franchise. I mentioned that this is actually the 6th installment of the MonsterVerse series, but it looks like they're only dealing with the events in the 2014 Godzilla movie that took place partly in San Francisco, as well as Kong Skull Island, which is where John Goodman's character came in. I also noticed that the first 2 episodes are directed by Matt Shakman, who had been hired to direct the next Star Trek movie until he left to direct the upcoming Fantastic Four film. So again, and I've mentioned this before when talking about the series, it looks like a lot of money has been put into the series. It looks like some of the effects even are better than the effects in some of the films. Also in the trailer, it looks like there's a cavern with what looks like could be dozens of Godzilla or other monster eggs. This has been teased, I think, in the Godzilla vs. Kong movie. They had some eggs in that movie too. But there was a rumor that the next Godzilla vs. Kong movie would be about a young Godzilla and Kong actually raising it or protecting it or something like that. So this could kind of set up that plot line in the next Godzilla vs. Kong movie. But it does look from the trailer that there's going to be a lot of different monsters in the series, a lot of locations, and again, a lot of money spent on the production of this 10-episode series for Apple TV. So I'm pretty excited for it. I think it's going to be really good. I think it's going to be pretty epic. And like I said, it looks like it may be better than some of the movies in this franchise. The last movie, the Godzilla vs. Kong movie, I think people liked it for what it was, but the plot line was just ridiculous. And it seems like ever since the first movie in the series, the 2014 Godzilla film, the stories have just gotten worse and worse. And it's just been about, big monsters fighting. So hopefully we can get a little bit better story in this series. It looks like the focus will be on the narrative a little bit more than the monsters. But there are scenes with Godzilla in this series, which is crazy because I can't even imagine how much it costs to create the digital render of Godzilla, and they'll be able to use it in this series. Of course, they don't have to create it, and that's a lot more money when you have to create a brand new monster. And it does look like they're just using monsters that have already been shown either in a Godzilla movie or in one of the Kong Skull Island movies. So we're probably just seeing the same renders that have been created before, But still, it looks like a lot of money has been piped into this. I'll put a link to the trailer in the description below, but let me know if you watch it. What do you think of this series, and will you be watching it when it comes out in November? I'll be reviewing it on this channel, so if you are subscribed, you will be hearing about it. But let me know, are you excited for the Monsterverse series on Apple TV? So this next story is about a future project that has been announced since the writer's strike has been lifted, and it's one I'm really excited about because I loved the first movie, and that is a sequel to the movie Heat. Now, this comes from the website The Illuminerdi, but it does come from an actual interview from Michael Mann, the man who wrote the story and also wrote the sequel. While promoting the film Ferrari, Michael Mann was asked by Deadline if Heat 2 would be his next film. He responded, "Yes, Meg Gardner and myself wrote the novel Heat 2, which came out right when we were shooting Ferrari. It did very well. I plan to shoot that next." So it looks like the sequel will be adapted from the novel of the same name Mann wrote with Gardner recently. The book hit the New York Times bestsellers list after it was released in August. Before the strikes began, Deadline previously reported that Ferrari star Adam Driver was in talks to play a younger Neil McCauley, who was portrayed by Robert De Niro in the classic 1995 movie. When asked if he was planning to re-team with Driver on the upcoming sequel, Mann responded, "Perhaps. We don't talk about that yet. Let me put it this way. Adam and I got along like a house on fire on Ferrari. We have the same work ethic, which is pretty intense. We like each other, and we had a great time working together artistically." Michael Mann is not able to announce the stars of the movie, even though he can announce the movie because of the SAG actors strike. Because Michael Mann is a writer and the writer strike is over, that's why he can finally announce it. But because the actor strike is still going on, he can't announce any actors that he may have hired for the film, which is disappointing, but that's the world we live in, and that's why he had to kind of jump around it like that. The film will reportedly work as both a prequel and a sequel to the first film, with Macaulay, Chris Schilleris, who was played by Val Kilmer in the 1995 movie, and Vincent Hanna, who was played by Al Pacino from the original, in the years leading up to the events of the 1995 film. It will also reveal what happens to the surviving characters in the years following the original. So the only character, I think, from Macaulay's group that survived was Val Kilmer's character, and Vincent Hanna survived, but a few of the people on his team also did not. Val Kilmer, of course, unfortunately will not be able to reprise his role, but Al Pacino could appear as Vincent Hanna again, so that'll be interesting. But we'll also see these parts cast with younger actors. We'll see somebody as a young Val Kilmer and somebody as a young Al Pacino, which could be really interesting. I'm really excited to see who could be cast as those two actors or characters. I could see Boyd Holbrook maybe as a young Val Kilmer and young Al Pacino. Oh, maybe get the guy from Manhunter. He was also in the new Matrix movie. I can't remember his name right now. Jonathan something, I want to say. He's really good. I'm sorry. If anybody knows his name, you know who I'm talking about. But those are my two picks for those two actors or characters or whatever. But the story goes on to say that the past portion of the sequel will be set in Chicago in 1988, when Macaulay, Schilleris, and their crew were planning scores on the West Coast, the U.S.-Mexico border, and Chicago. At the same time, Hanna is becoming a rising star in the Chicago Police Department in pursuit of an ultraviolet gang of home invaders. Now, this may answer a question that I had when I first read about this, because when it talks about a prequel to the original Heat, it sounds like they were going to show the characters on both sides of that, the good guys and the bad guys, basically, and their past. But I was thinking, if those two groups don't intersect until the film Heat, how are you going to show two stories that don't intersect? Like, how are you going to show the background of Al Pacino and his crew, as well as the background of Robert De Niro's crew, but not have them intersect? Because as far as we know, they had never met each other before the events in Heat. But it looks like they might do some revisionist history with this cross-section of them meeting in Chicago. It says the past portion of the sequel will be set in Chicago, and both groups will be there. So maybe Hanna will be chasing after Macaulay and not even know it. Like, maybe they're the ultraviolet gang of home invaders. Although they weren't ultraviolent in the original Heat movie, they were very, task-oriented. They only killed people when there was no other choice and they had to. So there might be another group involved too. But I think that that's interesting, that perhaps they will meet to not even know it, and that would add a lot, obviously, to the mythos of the story. The 1995 movie starred De Niro, Pacino, Ashley Judd, Tom Sizemore, Amy Brenneman, and Jon Voight. The movie was a success, grossing $187 million worldwide. It's since become one of the most revered heist films of the 1990s. The original film followed a group of professional robbers led by De Niro as Neil McCauley. They soon start to gain the attention of the LAPD detective, Lieutenant Vincent Hanna Pacino. I love the original. I think that a lot of movies in the 90s had these great one-on-one scenes, and Heat definitely had that in more than one spot. But of course, everyone remembers that diner scene between De Niro and Pacino. So I hope that this movie kind of reinvents that. I would love to see more of that. But let me know, what do you think of this news? Do you think that we don't need a sequel to Heat? I think this is going to be really good just because Michael Mann is all over this, and the original Heat was just his baby, and they're not just getting a new director to reinvent a property that was revered. They're getting the original person back, and he's continuing the story that he started. So I think that this will be really good. But let me know, are you excited to see a sequel to the film Heat, or would you rather they just leave it as the perfect movie that it is? So now I just have one more story before I start on my Star Trek stuff, and that is that Netflix is planning to open brick and mortar retail outlets. Now, this comes from the magazine Variety, and they stated that Netflix announced plans to open its first permanent brick and mortar locations, initially targeting 2 in the US in 2025. The company has not said where those will be. The outlets will be kind of mini theme parks. They'll serve food and drink, sell merchandise, and include immersive installations based on hit titles like Squid Game or Stranger Things. The permanent stores represent a logical evolution for Netflix's steady retail expansion. The company has launched more than 40 pop-up locations to date, including the Netflix Bites restaurant in Los Angeles this summer, and ticketed experiences like the Queen's Ball, a Brighterton experience, and Stranger Things The Experience. Its next immersive experience is Squid Game The Trials, opening in LA on December 6th. Players will compete in 6 different challenges over the course of 70 minutes, with tickets starting at $39 each. So I think that this is really smart. I just spoke about, the actor strike, and then we had the writer strike, and that's going to delay a lot of stuff from coming out. And fans of different properties like Stranger Things and Cobra Kai, which is another Netflix property, are going to have to wait until these strikes are over to see new stuff. But if Netflix is able to successfully do this retail expansion, this could give fans another outlet, forgive the pun, to engage with these stories. And they don't have to wait for the next season of Stranger Things to come out. If they could just go to the Stranger Things experience and, see all the cool monsters and maybe eat at the ice cream shop and stuff like that, that'll kind of quell fans' desire for the new stuff and keep them interested in it. So when the new season of Stranger Things finally comes out, they won't forget about it and they'll still care about Stranger Things. And in a little bit, I'm going to talk about how Netflix is saving a Star Trek series. Well, if Star Trek starts to get released on Netflix, we could get another, Quark's Bar Star Trek experience because of Netflix. And think about how cool that would be. So I think at first you read a story like this and you're like, oh, they're just trying whatever. I think that this could be a major shift. I think this could be a huge thing for Netflix. Netflix has always kind of been on the edge of developing new things and kind of pushing this medium forward. And I think this evolution of creating these retail outlet stores and these immersive, experiences could be the next step in whatever you call streaming and how fans consume new things. So I think this is a really smart idea. It seems like Netflix does a lot of things right. They've been doing the streaming thing for a long time, and all these new streaming services come out and try and knock them off. And Netflix is still going strong. So there's a reason for that. And it's because of good ideas like this. And I think that this could be really popular and, like I said, could revolutionize how fans consume content. But let me know, what do you think of this story? Have you ever been to a Netflix pop-up store? I would love to hear your experience. I would probably go to the Stranger Things one. I mean, I'm not a fan of Brighterton or Squid Game, so I probably wouldn't go to those things. But I definitely would go to the Stranger Things experience. And if they did a Star Trek thing, I mean, wow, I would be in for sure for that. But let me know, what do you think of this? Do you think that this is a good idea? Or do you think that this is just another way for the streaming service to make money? All right, so now let's get into the Star Trek portion of the show. And first, I'm going to talk about what happened at the New York Comic Con with Star Trek. So Star Trek did have an appearance at the New York Comic Con, but again, because of the actor strike, very few people were there. Only writers and producers could be there. And one of the people that was there was Alex Kurtzman. So he was at a Star Trek Universe panel on Saturday, and he gave an update on what's going on with Trek at Paramount Plus, teasing future unannounced projects, as well as production details for the other known projects already in the works. I think that this was done to try and quell the rumors that Paramount is not too happy with the current prospects of Star Trek, and franchise head Alex Kurtzman had this to say. I have to say, our friends at Paramount Plus have been unbelievable, truly unbelievable. They have supported all these shows in the most extraordinary ways. I will tease that I did meet with everybody at the top this week, and there's a bunch of new things now in the works, which is really, really exciting. So there's no shortage of support from Paramount Plus for the Star Trek universe. He also went on to say that the Section 31 film is still happening, but that the project was originally scheduled to begin production this fall, but of course, because of the actors' strike, there are no further details until that is complete. So it sounds like they already have a script done for the Section 31 film and are just waiting to get underway until the actor strike is over. That's really good news, because if they had to wait for the script too, then of course that would just put more time onto the production schedule. But if they were set to start production in this fall, that means they already had the script for sure. Alex Kurtzman also had an update for the upcoming series Starfleet Academy, which will be a brand new series, supposedly be released maybe in 2024, probably 2025 on Paramount Plus. So this is what he had to say about Starfleet Academy. So we are back in the writer's room. We are officially going to start shooting next year. Noga Landau, the amazing Loga Landau, and I are running it. For all the Nancy Drew fans out there, she's incredible. First of all, it's the greatest writing staff. We had so much joy just getting each other through the strike, staying connected and driven. And coming back into the room and working was so wonderful. We just came back this week, as a matter of fact. And one of our writers is Tawny Newsome, which is really exciting. She's a genius. Tawny Newsome, of course, voices Beckett Mariner on Star Trek Lower Decks. I saw a lot of news outlets acting like this was brand new news that Tawny Newsome was writing on Starfleet Academy. They announced this when they announced Starfleet Academy months ago. So I don't know if people forgot or what, but I remember that they said that Tawny Newsome was going to be a part of the writer's room for Starfleet Academy. So I don't know why. I saw a couple of YouTube channels put out like, oh my God, Tawny Newsome is on Starfleet Academy. It's like, where were you 2 months ago when they announced this? But whatever. Alex Kurtzman also spoke about how Starfleet Academy will be very different from any other Star Trek series in tone and in concept. And his comments to me made it seem like this series is definitely being created for kids and tweens. And I have spoke about this before with Starfleet Academy, how it's starting to sound like it's going to be a CW version of a Star Trek show. But maybe that's what we need. I'm all for, taking big swings and trying something new. But if this is going to be about, relationships and stuff like that, I don't know if I'm going to like it. I do like Gen V, and that's about kids too, but I don't think that Star Trek is going to do anything like The Boys and Gen V on Amazon. I don't think it's going to be like that series at all. But it is good to hear that Starfleet Academy and Section 31 are still going, and Alex Kurtzman made it seem like there may be something new out there. I know that fans initially were like, oh, he's talking about Star Trek Legacy. That show is never going to happen. I'm sorry if you are holding on to a hope that Star Trek Legacy is going to happen. I'm telling you right now, Star Trek Legacy is never going to happen. That show is just not going to happen, because the only reason that the third season of Picard was popular was because of the characters from The Next Generation who would not be appearing for the most part in a Star Trek Legacy show. The new characters that were created were not strong enough, and we're just never going to see Star Trek Legacy. So I'm sorry if you're a fan of that idea, but it's just never going to happen. So let me know, what do you think of this news? Are you happy that we're going to get some more Star Trek on Paramount Plus? That Section 31 is still happening? That Starfleet Academy is still happening? I'm glad both are still happening. I'm definitely more excited about one than the other. I'm sure you can guess which. But I'll watch at least one episode of both when they come out. So let me know, what do you think of this news? And are you excited for both projects? So now I want to get to the big news of the week in Star Trek, which was that Prodigy, the animated series, was saved by Netflix. Of course, the first season of Prodigy was released on Paramount Plus, but even after the second season was greenlit, it was then canceled when it was reported that most of the second season was completed and that the series was being shopped around to different networks. Well, it looks like Netflix was the one who decided to purchase it. And I think that it's interesting that they did it right now because, and I've mentioned this before with Prodigy, that I thought that somebody would buy it like Netflix if the writers and actors strike went a long ways. And we're a long ways right now because, like I said, it looks like streaming services like Netflix will be looking for new content in 2024 because of the actor strike. There won't be any because nobody can film right now. So having Prodigy already with a season that's done makes a lot of sense for Netflix to buy it. So Star Trek Prodigy Season 2, which has been completed, will air at some point in 2024 on Netflix. The streaming service will also add the first season of the series to its platform at some point before the release of Season 2. And there was a teaser clip containing the Doctor, voiced by Robert Picardo from Voyager, that was played last August. So he will also be a part of the second season as well, which will be great. The showrunners of Star Trek Prodigy, Dan and Kevin Hageman, made the announcement to fans and thanked them for fighting for the series. So if you are a fan of Prodigy and you shared hashtags, if you signed the petition, if you told your friends to watch Prodigy, if you watched the first season over and over again, congratulations. I really think that you helped bring Prodigy back. Again, I think the strike had a lot to do with that too, but I think that the fans really did do something to help Prodigy, and the showrunners were obviously very thankful. So if you did, fight for Prodigy, give yourself a pat on the back. I think you did something to help this show get back on the air. But what does this mean for the future of Star Trek? Could more Star Trek be released on Netflix? Now, this kind of lines up with an industry rumor that Paramount may abandon their streaming service and instead produce content that can be sold to streamers like Netflix, Amazon Prime, and Apple TV. This was actually a subject I brought up a few weeks ago on my podcast, which was what would happen to Star Trek if Paramount Plus went away. And I said it might be one of the best things that could happen to Star Trek, because that would mean that Paramount would just be a studio that produces stuff. So it doesn't mean that everything that Paramount produces would go away. If Paramount Plus goes away, they would still create new stuff like Yellowstone or whatever's going on over there, and they would just sell it to other streamers that are doing better than Paramount Plus is. I made the point that the best Paramount Plus can hope for is to be the 7th most popular streaming service, which is not very good, especially with all the money that they've poured into the streaming service to try and get it off the ground. So again, this lines up to something that I've been saying for a long time, and I hope that it does come to fruition for Star Trek, because I think that Star Trek could do better on Netflix, because one of the problems with Paramount Plus and Star Trek being on Paramount Plus is that not a lot of people watch Paramount Plus. If you're a Star Trek fan, you probably just have Paramount Plus for Star Trek. And that's okay for Star Trek fans, but if you're trying to grow a franchise, if you're trying to say, we have, 100,000 fans, we want 200,000 fans, you have to have it somewhere where fans will interact with it. And Netflix has such a wide fan base. They have so many different things going on that people watch on Netflix. You have that crossover. You have people that are like, oh, well, I've watched Breaking Bad 5 times. What am I going to watch now? Oh, Strange New Worlds is on Netflix now. Maybe I'll finally watch it. That's what's going to happen if Star Trek moves to Netflix. So that's why I think this is the best thing possible that could happen to Star Trek. I hope they move everything off Paramount Plus and start releasing it on Netflix. I can almost guarantee you that Section 31 will not be released on Paramount Plus, that it's going to be released on Netflix. You heard it here first. Give me a like right now if you agree with me. And if you're going to check back when eventually it's announced that Section 31, the film, will be released on Netflix, because the way this is going, that's really the best way for this franchise to become more popular. So let me know in the comments, what do you think? Do you think I'm right? And do you think that Netflix is the future for Star Trek? Are you happy that Prodigy is back? Will you be watching it, or do you still not care? I'm probably going to watch the second season because, for one, I love Robert Picardo. And two, I watched the first season even though I didn't like it. And just because, it's Star Trek, I want it to at least get my view in the Netflix data. Now that we're knowing so much about streaming service results and it's being, so transparent, I want, my at least one view to be in there. So I'll watch it and I'll give my honest review on this channel, of course. But let me know, what do you think about this news? And do you see a future for Star Trek at Netflix? All right, so now let's talk about the thing that, according to my analytics, most of the people that watch my podcast like to hear, and that's my review of the latest episode of Star Trek Lower Decks. This episode was another good one. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was funny. I liked a lot of the way they brought back a lot of the characters from prior episodes of Lower Decks. Again, every week I do a breakdown video of the latest episode. This week I released it on Friday instead of Thursday because my daughter's birthday was on Thursday. So this week's video doesn't have a lot of views because it's a day late and a dollar short, I guess. So if you could watch that video, I'd really appreciate it because I worked real hard on it, but it doesn't have a lot of views right now, and I thought it was pretty good. There's a lot about AI in this episode and a lot of hidden stuff too that you may not have picked up on through the first view. I know I didn't. I watched the episode 3 times, I think, before my breakdown video was over. So that video is definitely good, so definitely give it a shot. But some of the things I picked up in this episode, first of all, I was at least half right with my theory on the villain that keeps reoccurring this season, the mysterious ship that's been taking out other alien vessels. Originally, I thought that the mysterious villain would in fact be a team-up of multiple villains created by the crew of the Cerritos, but it appears that team-up occurred actually in this episode. So now, because we had Badgie and we had Peanut Hamper and Agamus, in this episode, I don't think we're going to get them again. And they made it pretty obvious that they are not involved in any way with this mysterious ship. So that theory is gone. But I did say that I thought that the ships were not destroyed, that they had been stolen or possibly shrunken down just by the laser beam that was fired at them. And it seems like that was true. That was confirmed in this episode. So I guess I'm 50%. I'm 1 out of 2 on my theories on the main villain. But I do like how that's progressing and how we get just like a little crumb every episode. That's obviously going to lead up until the season finale this year. Another thing I've kind of talked about every week is that Lower Decks continues to bring the audience to new places each and every week, which is kind of a holdover, I think, from Star Trek Strange New Worlds. And I think it's something that Star Trek fans like. They don't like to be in the same spot too long. I'm not talking about Deep Space Nine, of course. That show's amazing. But sans Deep Space Nine, I think most Star Trek fans like it when we're going to a different place every week. And Lower Decks continues to do that. But all season, we've been visiting places that were first mentioned on other series like Deep Space Nine and the original series and stuff like that. But this episode had the characters dealing with things that had been created just on Lower Decks. So we had Badgie, we had Peanut Hamper, we had Agamus, even the Drukmani are an alien race that were created for Lower Decks. So it was like that this episode was kind of a Lower Decks episode for Lower Decks, if that makes sense, because every Lower Decks episode is so steeped in Star Trek knowledge. It seems like every episode of Lower Decks has a little bit of nugget from the original series, from the animated series, from Deep Space Nine, from Next Generation, just from all the old series. And this episode did that somewhat, but it was mainly based on things that had been created during the first 4 seasons or 3.5 seasons of Lower Decks. So I thought that was pretty cool. I thought that was very smart, and I definitely got that, and I thought it played out really well. One thing I thought was weird is, where is T'Lyn? After being featured prominently in each episode early in the season, the character has been missing the past 2 episodes, which I think is odd because they made her such a big part of like every episode up until the last 2, and then she's just gone. So it's almost like these episodes were written before they introduced that character or something like that, and they had to fit these episodes somewhere in the back end. I don't know. It just seems weird that T'Lyn was so prominent early on, and now she's just gone. I've spoken about how I really like the character. I think that her dynamic adds a lot to the dynamic already created with the main 4 characters on the series. And I miss her. I hope that she comes back, in this next episode, and that she's not just gone from the series, and they don't just say like, oh, like T'Lyn went back to Vulcan or whatever. Especially, I think the last episode was the episode where she decided that she was content with staying on the Cerritos. So writing her off after that would really not make any sense. But I miss that character. I miss T'Lyn, and I hope that she's back soon. I also noticed that this episode once again mentioned the Black Mountain and the Great Koala that runs the universe. We also saw some other, religious iconography that we've seen on Lower Decks before. So it almost seems like Lower Decks has also created an afterlife in the Star Trek universe. Religion has always been kind of a taboo subject in Star Trek because you start to get into creationism, and if we know how the planet was created, then how can we still believe in this, that, and the other thing? So Star Trek, I think, for the most part, not completely, there's definitely spirituality and mysticism in Star Trek, but for the most part, Star Trek doesn't really deal with it. But it seems like Lower Decks is giving an option that this could be the afterlife. So once again, in this episode, there's a mention of the Great Koala and the Black Mountain. And we saw that earlier this season when we thought that Boimler had died and we saw him, visit the afterlife, I guess. So that could be one thing that Lower Decks adds to the Star Trek universe is that they've created an afterlife. I think that would be pretty significant. Like nobody really talks about that. But it does seem like Mike McMahon and the writers on Lower Decks are trying to create. This is what happens when people die in the Star Trek universe. And I think that's pretty profound, and like nobody's talking about that. So I kind of just realized that watching this episode, and I think that's pretty cool. That's definitely a big swing that Mike McMahon's taking, especially with how, like I said, taboo religion is in the Star Trek universe. And it seems like he's just, saying, nope, this is what we think happens in the afterlife in Star Trek, and we're going with it. So as I mentioned, my theory about who the mysterious villain has been debunked after this episode. So now, what is going on with this mysterious ship? So one of my theories has been that this ship could have a connection to the shuttlecraft Yosemite. That was the shuttlecraft from the Cerritos that crash landed in the same episode that introduced Agamis. And I've said that I think that the ship kind of looks like a shuttlecraft if you kind of, like slim it down and round out the edges a little bit, that it could be a Starfleet shuttlecraft that's been modified. We know also from one of the scans that there is one life form in the ship, which I also think could be the clone of Brad Boimler, which ties into my theory that this villain is one that the crew of the Cerritos have created. And now whatever this villain is, it's coming back to haunt them. So that's what I got. I think that either this could be a version of the Yosemite, or it could have some connection to the clone of Brad Boimler that we think is dead, but I don't know if we know that for sure. I remember that there was a scene that he was supposedly dead, but that he could also be, in Section 31. So I don't know, but let me know, what are your theories about this? Because I'm out of theories, I guess. I do think that the ship does have some connection to the Yosemite and Brad Boimler, but outside of that, I'm out of it. So I don't know. Let me know. Do you have any theories about the mysterious ship? Because I'd love to hear them. And then my final question to the audience is this the best season so far of Lower Decks? I read a couple of articles this week, and in them, the reviewer did say that they thought this was the best season of Lower Decks so far. I hadn't really thought about it until I read those reviews. And I will say that I love all the character development first and foremost. This season, definitely, we have seen movement on each of these characters, and I love that. Because sometimes when you have these silly shows, you expect nothing to change and everything's a bottle episode. But we have seen forward movement with these characters, and I think that that's great. I also think it's pretty cool to go back and visit a lot of the places and aliens that Lower Decks has gone to this season. And I already talked about that, how every week they kind of go to a new place. So I do love that about the season, but I kind of miss the movie style episode. We had the Crisis Point episode and then Crisis Point 2. I don't think that there's a movie episode this season, and I miss that. I think that those, are my favorite Lower Decks episodes. And if we did have a movie episode this season, I think it would make it my best season. But if we don't, I don't know. I mean, we still have 3 episodes left, so this definitely could win out as the best season so far of Lower Decks. But up until this point, I still think the 3rd season is my favorite so far for me. But I could have my opinion changed definitely by the end of the year. So let me know, what do you think of this episode? What do you think of the season so far of Lower Decks? Do you think this is the best season of Lower Decks? How do you think the main villain or the mysterious ship, that plot line has gone so far this season? And do you have any theories on who that could be? Well, that is everything I have for today, but let me know if I missed anything. Thank you very much for listening this week. Please do not forget to hit that like button before you go, and I'll see you next time on What Did I Miss?